I hope you're doing well. I'm in conversation with Sonam Mahajan, a certified mindfulness teacher, an executive coach, a life coach. Sonam's career spanned across the globe. She has achieved results from boardrooms, impacted schools, worked in corporates and companies, worked with individuals to help them transform and create an impact in their well-being, resilience, and of course also productivity through mindfulness and coaching techniques. Sonam joins us from Singapore today for this conversation. Sonam, I'm super excited for this conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Wonderful to be here in conversation with you, Shradha. Thank you so much for having me.
So Sonam, tell me, mindfulness and life coaching, that's such an interesting journey. Tell us more.
Where do I begin? You want me to backtrack all the way?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay, I'm going to try and keep this short, but no, I can't help but mention that I think for me, all of this began in my childhood. Spirituality has been something that's been part of my life since then. Growing up in a spiritual family, it's probably not something very unique. You know, if you're growing up in India, it's all around you. It started like that, you know, at the age of 14, 15, picking up an Osho book or a Swami Vivekanand book from my granddad's library. Then I would see my parents, my grandparents practicing yoga, you know, so just joining them in their pranayam or their yoga nidra practice, falling asleep while doing it. I think that's how it kind of started. My parents, grandparents were trained healers. So it was very normal for my sister and I to have Reiki done in the house or pranic healing. So, yeah, and the reason I mention this is that it's played a huge part in my subconscious. It's been there all around me. And I think that was quite foundational for me in some sense. Then, of course, as I started studying and working, I think just started noticing these patterns of me having existential questions pretty early on in life. I also noticed a pattern around me making choices or taking decisions that was the experience of which was quite tough. And as a young person, you know, that got me questioning that why am I choosing these paths when I could be doing something that's a lot more straightforward or simpler for me. So kind of inflicting that journey upon myself, and you know, one thing led to another, and that's why in the last 15 years of my career, this is my third career in some sense, and I think it's just taught me so much about myself that I just like is an understatement. I really, really enjoy the process of personal development. And I think it's just brought me, the decisions that I took, the steps that I took brought me closer and closer to who I was as a person. And that was very important for me. So I think as tough as the journey was, it didn't matter. And I was willing to kind of pay that price because it really was that important to me. And how spirituality comes in is that it's been a huge enabler for me in this path of personal growth. So yeah, I think thereafter it was just a matter of how can I help others with, their journeys and bring in what I've learned, what I'm continuing to learn. So I trained, I studied for a few years, you know, did my certifications to be able to teach this professionally as a coach, as a mindfulness teacher. So in a nutshell, you know, that's where my motivations came from. That's what my background was like. And I guess that's why I'm where I'm at. You never know. It's always, you know, an evolving journey. You don't know where it's going to take you. But here I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely connect with your career path for sure, because for me as well, this is kind of becoming a health coach and getting more deeper into Ayurveda after my career journey of being a TV producer, working in food and lifestyle programming, and then getting into training and becoming a chef and running my own natural foods line for 8 years and transitioning into this. So I think everything is a journey, and it just helps us kind of understand our clients. And I'm sure you feel that too right now with your practice, that everything is just an amalgamation of beautifully putting the pieces together, even though it may seem like, oh my God. Yeah. So tell me something about how, mindfulness, especially with this pandemic, has become a catchphrase. And everybody's talking about it. And of course, there's so many different schools of thought and definitions of mindfulness. But what is it? Because it can be so confusing.
Okay, I'm going to try and explain this as simply, keep it simple for those listening in. One of the most commonly used definitions for mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So let me break this down. It's a very particular way of practicing meditation, and you're doing it consciously, and you're doing it, you're training yourself to be in the present moment, and while doing so you're being non-judgmental. That's what the definition talks about. Now, the reason, one of the reasons why there's a lot of confusion with the term is that it is referred to as a practice. So when we talk about, and I'll describe both of these. One is a practice, and the second is as a trait and as a disposition. So when we talk about mindfulness as a practice, as a tool, as a technique, what we are talking about is specifically the practices that strengthen certain traits, that strengthen our capacities, our psychological skills. And so that's the practice part of it. And when we talk about the trait and the disposition, that's our default way of being. This is how one naturally tends to be in day-to-day life. So if you're going about your day and you're more grounded, present with what's happening as things are unfolding, if you're more aware of yourself and your surroundings, that's mindfulness described as a trait. So, and I get what you're saying in terms of, I'm living mindfully, or one must be mindful. So the term is used, in a very casual manner as well, which is fine, but I understand where this confusion then comes from. So I think understanding just this distinction of the fact that mindfulness is a practice, and then it's also a way of being in life, that can provide some bit of clarity.
And I think this connects back to Ayurveda and how like this conversation is so relevant to Ayurveda, just because in Ayurveda, simple techniques of being mindful. So of course, when you mention practice, it's of course you can become in Ayurveda, because yoga is a sister science, learn mindfulness techniques in Ayurveda through yoga. And of course, being present, or actually just noticing if you're mindful or not, is as simple as if you've eaten food really late at night and you can't fall asleep and you're wondering why, or this having trouble falling asleep. If you're more mindful and just present, you realize that, okay, perhaps it was probably that altered time of eating, which asleep has led to lack of sleep. So Sonam, what is the difference between meditation and mindfulness then? Because are they similar? Because I know meditation is a practice, and yeah, please help clarify that.
Great question. Thank you for asking that. I think very relevant. So mindfulness is a kind of meditation. It's a unique way of meditation. So the simplest way to look at it is as a subset within the broader meditation umbrella. So mindfulness practices also involve meditation. So where the there's no right or wrong or good or better or any of that. I think there are several meditation practices, there are several spiritual practices. Now each of the meditations and spiritual practices are designed to cater to specific outcomes, and the manner in which we do these is also quite unique. So mindfulness is a unique way in itself of meditation. So again, it's a subset. Now, how it's different is that it's not religious or spiritual, or doesn't require you to have subscription to any particular faith or philosophy. So the practices, again, are backed by scientific evidence, research. So I think that in some way can be a differentiating factor for people who may not want to have that. Again, it's like I described, it's a subset in some way of the broader umbrella of meditation. And again, to each his own, what works best for someone. And also depending on what you're looking at in terms of the stage of life that you're in, pick the practice that suits you best in that sense. So I think it's not so much of meditation versus mindfulness, but just understanding the unique paths that they offer, and then what is it that you're looking to, and then aligning with that practice in some sense. But yeah, I think this, what mindfulness does, it doesn't have the philosophical or religious or spiritual angle. It doesn't probably require you to use any incense sticks, sit on a cushion or chant any mantra. So So the practices are quite straightforward in the sense that they can be measured, they can be understood or practiced by anybody without really subscribing to anything. I can make it.
No, that breaks it down. So essentially, when you say subset, so that means if I'm even doing a mindfulness practice, uh, in a sense, I'm meditating. But of course, they are completely different schools of thought. And like you mentioned, also one is completely, mindfulness is completely disconnected in a sense of your spiritual path. It kind of has no affinity to go ahead, and it's devoid of any religious practice. That's what you meant.
So what I would say is that so it's not that it devoids you of the spiritual or religious angle. In fact, one of the benefits of mindfulness is that it strengthens your existing belief or your religious practice. So it isn't a disconnect. If at all, they can work together. But the reason why I mentioned that it is not religious is purely for the sake of a practitioner. So if I come in to do a mindfulness practice, and if I say don't want to subscribe to a particular philosophy or believe in something that can't be explained by science, i I can be assured that mindfulness will allow me that scientific reasoning or understanding, because it's the practices are backed by that. So again, there isn't a disconnect. I mean, I must I've spirituality has been a part of my life, and it's really it can be integrated very beautifully, and it kind of works together in that sense.
So if you are practicing mindfulness, you are meditating because they're subsets of each other. That's what I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. So the practices, so mindful, it is actually mindfulness meditation. So it is a form of meditation. It's just unique in its form. Now, the roots of mindfulness do come from Eastern philosophies. So it has been created from there, but it has been designed in a unique manner to serve particular and specific outcomes. Now, when you are practicing or doing this, several mindfulness practices, you are sitting in meditation, which looks quite similar to some of the other meditations that one might have done. Now, not all meditations can be measured in terms of their impact. Mindfulness practices can be measured in terms of the impact that they've had on a person pre and post the person practicing. Yeah.
When we speak about this present scenario of the world, all of us are worried about the future, and we've forgotten to live and embrace the present moment. How can mindfulness help us with this, or being mindful?
Yeah. So this is great, right? Mindfulness is designed to enhance our capability, our capacity to be in the present moment. So great question, Shraddha. Very, very relevant as well. I think mindfulness can play a huge role in today's times because they're uncertain. And we as human beings just don't like uncertainty. Our brain doesn't work well with uncertainty. To the as far as we can, we want to be able to project into the future and know at least roughly what's going to happen. And in this case, we can't kind of do that. We don't know how things are going to evolve, and that really creates stress for us. Now, as we feel more stressed, it plays out in various ways. Now, you asked about being in the present moment. Now, mindfulness trains us, or it helps us tap into our capacity, existing capacity and capability to be more and more in the present moment. We're always so caught up in being in our future and our past, and everyone, I mean, I experience this on a daily basis, and you kind of consciously have to ground yourself in the now. But the past is gone and the future is just in our mind, and now actually is the only time that's real for us to think, feel, touch, smell, communicate. So the more we can be in the now, actually we can be a lot more optimized, we can be a lot more resourceful with our future as well. Now, and I think as we even do that, as we're more and more present, we actually have this feeling that we're reclaiming our life in some sense, and that feeling itself is something else. I think when you have that experience, you know how valuable it is, and then you kind of, that motivates you to work towards it. Now, mindfulness I was talking about stress levels increasing with uncertainty. We can't be sure whether we're going to catch this virus or not. We can't be sure, but what we can try to do is to optimize our body, optimize our mind to the best that we can. Now, as we practice mindfulness, what happens is that our reactivity reduces. Now, when we are stressed, what happens is that we are likely, or to kind of operate more from the emotional centers of our brain. And when we do that, we are just in a reactive mode to what's happening in our life. Now, as we practice mindfulness, it tames these sort of reactive responses, and it enables us to respond more from the executive functions of our brain, such as the prefrontal cortex, and that allows us to take wisdom and allows us to take action through wisdom. So that the pause that it's able to that it creates for us can be so beneficial in times like these. Now, it not only changes the structure of our brain, but there's so many benefits of mindfulness. It increases our resilience, improves our mental health, reduces any kind of addictive behaviors we may have, our attention, our working memory. There's so many other benefits that we can experience as we practice mindfulness. And in times like this, I think that's the best we can give ourselves, is to kind of prep our body and mind to be able to cope with the circumstances that surround us. And I think the other thing it really helps us do is acceptance. And especially in times like this, where we don't have control over what's going to happen, not in a way to passively resign to what we are experiencing, but really to be able to acknowledge and just accept that this is happening, and I'm going to take a pause, accept it, recognize that it's happening, and then respond to it. What we tend to do is tend to tell ourselves that I shouldn't feel this, I must get over this, I must have a positive state of mind. But we're all in a pandemic. I think that's expecting way too much of ourselves, and it's not at the click of a finger. Sure, we must have positive states of mind, or kind of aspire to work towards that, but then the process of that begins with acceptance. So I really tuning into some of this, and then the whole self-awareness and the awareness of those around us is important in times like this. What are people around me going through? How can I be of support to them? And what's happening internally with me, with my thoughts, with my feelings? So long answer to to this. There's so many elements or angles to what's happening. Yeah.
And it's needed. I think the long answer is great, because I think all of us are experiencing this, and everybody is looking to try and figure out, like you mentioned, why am I feeling this? And instead of letting those feelings come, they try to disconnect themselves sometimes from them and feel like, but I shouldn't be feeling this. So, I think this is very valid, and thanks so much for this. And I think your answer also really helps clarify, because, a lot of us, or, some friends, families are stuck alone in this situation without their network, their immediate network of families and friends, who they're physically used to kind of having them around, or colleagues. So I think your explanation has kind of helped spread some element of relief. How can mindfulness help in parenting and in nurturing children? Because of course parents are spending a lot more time with their children than they're used to, and it can be sometimes testing of nerves. I know lots of friends and family members who are getting used to this, still getting used to this new normal. So how can mindfulness help with that?
Thank you, Shradha. I'm a parent to a 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So yeah, one speaking as a parent, so I have complete empathy, compassion for all parents out there. Not easy. I think there's just so much that's being juggled in terms of responsibilities, and we're individually going through a testing time, and it's a new time for all of us, for the kids as well. And kids have limitations. They would just run out and play, and now they can't do that. Wearing masks and getting out of the house, it's a completely new world for them, and so many kids are having schools on the TV, on their laptops. So it's a new world. It's a new world for them, and must say that kids are very resilient. but they're also going through their own stuff, and the parents at the same time, you're working your job, and at the same time homeschooling the kids, and it's just a lot. So firstly, you're doing a great job. I think just lots of empathy and lots of strength to everybody out there. This there's not much one can sit here and advise. I'm a parent, so I know how hard this is. But what I've tried to do is at least, even if we can find that half an hour where we can be with the kids in full attention, not being distracted with our devices, and just fully, wholly be present with them. Now, this brings me back to the present moment. I'm using this time and again because it's just so powerful. I think if even for that half an hour we are just with them, with our attention, they sense that. And research tells us this, that kids just pick off our energies. They can sense our mood, how we're thinking. And the more we're able to even give them that half an hour of purposeful, meaningful interaction, that helps them make the emotional connections that they need to, also helps them build a deeper sense of being, which then goes a long way. That can fuel the rest of the day, for all you know. So that I found it to be really powerful. I do this with my kids in pockets of the day. Even if I get 15 minutes, that 15 minutes is really with them, looking them in the eye, talking to them, as stupid as that activity might be, but really engaging with it, having fun, becoming a child with them. And then they sense that. You can almost see the appreciation in their eyes when they're recognized, when they're seen, they're heard. And that's all they need sometimes. I know this isn't easy, but all I'm trying to say is finding pockets of time in the day, or maybe just even half an hour during the course of the entire day, that we can just be fully with them. Now, this is what one can do. Now, how this also helps, as we are more grounded in the moment, is that what I already spoke about, the reaction to response. So many parents say that, I wish I had not reacted. I wish I had not shouted at the kid or hit the kid, or whatever form of reaction that we tend to have. And so many of them long for that pause. How do you make that pause when the kids are just driving you up the wall? Mindfulness, being in the present moment, as we practice this more and more, it just allows us to build this capability to be in the present, to take this pause that we need, and then think about, okay, what am I going to do? But that first pause of, let me not shout, or let me not belittle the kid, or whatever form of it may be. So mindfulness helps with that as well.
Now, the other question, which is really interesting, is Ayurveda talks about mindful eating, and how I tell all my health coaching clients to practice eating more mindfully. So essentially, enjoying your food, removing all your devices, stepping away from your work desk and your mobile, switching off your television, and actually just concentrating on the art of eating, taking in those flavors, aromas, texture, so that you eat less and you're more present while you eat at the same time, and you actually are taking in that good energy versus taking in energy of stress or other conversations, which are always kind of in our monkey minds all the time. What are your thoughts on mindful eating?
Thank you, Shradha. Great question. And I'm so glad to hear a lot of people are learning this through your experience. Definitely, I think mindful eating is one of the practices that we even teach in mindfulness. And everything that you described, I think it's very relevant. Just being with our food, undivided, attention to our food, being able to touch the food, feel the food, the texture of the food. When I break it, how does it feel? When I put it in my mouth, how am I chewing? What are the sensations in my mouth? Tuning in fully to that experience of eating is mindful eating. And then, of course, perhaps even giving a thought to the life cycle of the food. Where did the food come from? Who's cooked the food? Brings up emotions of gratitude, and fully being present. And I think what you mentioned is very valid too, about being aware of, when am I feeling hungry? What's my body telling me? How much do I need to eat? Do I, not overeating in that sense, or undereating? Being conscious, being aware of some of these aspects. So absolutely, I think very, very relevant and very important. So whether, and this is something that you can do even with the first 3 bites of your food. say you don't have the time, because it does involve you doing this slowly. People are, again, grabbing meals on the go.
Yeah.
And especially now when there's so many things to juggle, you don't know how you're consuming food in front of a laptop, kids are there in this. So even if you have time for just the first 3 bites, or time for your snack, if there is even that much that you can consume mindfully, that's a start.
Thanks so much for that. It's good to know that there is an alignment, and that's exactly how I feel in terms of mindful eating, and you explained it so beautifully. I would love it if you can share some sort of meditation, help us take away from this conversation.
Absolutely. Why don't we go? Can I guide one for you
Yes,
now?
yes, that would be
Okay, great. Let's do it. So I think you can remain seated. Let me guide you through a very simple perception practice. It's an easy way to be introduced to mindfulness. So
okay.
you're seated, right? You're
Yeah,
comfortably seated where
yeah,
you are?
yeah.
Okay. With your feet on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're ready, you can gently close your eyes. Now taking your attention to your breath, focusing on each inhalation and exhalation. Noticing the breath as it moves in and out of the body. Gently guiding the attention to sounds, noticing any sounds near and far. Noticing one sound at a time. What are the sounds you hear in your room? Noticing each of these sounds. Now taking your attention to your mouth, noticing the sensations of the saliva in the mouth. Noticing any aftertaste in the mouth of food that you may have consumed, or perhaps the lack of it. Does the mouth feel wet or dry? Noticing any and all sensations in the mouth. Taking attention to smell now, noticing what you smell in the air around you. Is there more than one smell that is prominent for you in this moment? Noticing if any smell triggers an emotion for you. Gently shift the attention to the skin now, noticing the feeling of the contact of your clothes on the skin. Noticing the temperature of the air in the space that you're in. Is it warm or cool? Now gently opening the eyes and seeing the view around you, aside of your devices. Noticing what you see around you, becoming curious about the details. What are some of the colors that surround you? Noticing the intensity of the colors. Notice the shapes that you see around you. What appears to be closer to you? Is there something around you that you've previously never noticed, or perhaps never noticed to this detail? Now letting go of the attention to the things around you and gently closing your eyes. Taking the awareness within to your breath, noticing each in breath and out breath. Noticing your experience in this moment. When you're ready, you may gently open your eyes.
Thank you. That was wonderful and so relaxing.
I'm glad, Shraddha. I think what one I think really needs to remember is that life itself is meditation. It's a meditation practice, and how we can think of our day as an extension to us sitting. A number of us don't have the time. I think there's always this I can't do half an hour, I can't do 15 minutes, I only have 5 minutes, and then feeling not as great about yourself because you only had 5 minutes. So I think just looking at life itself as our meditation and trying to find moments where we can ground ourselves in the now, in the present moment, that itself will become meditation for us then. Like I described, the trait aspect of it. So even if we have that 5 minutes, just treating whatever time we had in the day to sit in meditation and then taking that and treating that as an extension for the rest of the day.
Thank you. So guys, if you're tuning in, remember there are no excuses now. Sonam has like literally broken it down. So, you can't complain anymore about the paucity of time when you're meditating. And thank you so much, Sonam, for this conversation. It's been so wonderful. And I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And it's wonderful to connect with everyone watching. Thank you so much.